My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 35. 3 months ago at 7:18 on a Tuesday morning, I stood on my own front porch holding two screaming newborns while my ex-husband's girlfriend threw coffee at my mailbox and screamed that I was a fraud who trapped men with fake pregnancies. My neighbor Margaret Hale had her phone out, recording everything, while Ethan, my ex-husband, sat in his Mercedes across the street, smirking like he'd orchestrated the whole thing, which, of course, he had. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" Kayla shrieked, her designer heels clicking on my driveway. She was 26, blonde, and shaking with the kind of rage that only comes from someone who's been lied to but doesn't know it yet. "Ethan told me everything. You can't have kids. That's why he left you. So whose babies are those really, Natalie? Which one of your little side pieces knocked you up?" I shifted my daughter's weight in my left arm. My son was wailing against my right shoulder. It was 41 degrees out. I was wearing a nursing tank and yoga pants with spit up on them. I'd had maybe 11 hours of sleep total in the past week, and all I could think was, Ethan coached her on exactly what to say, down to the phrase, little side pieces. That was his language, his cruelty. "Kayla," I said quietly, "please lower your voice. You're scaring my children." "Your children?" She laughed, high and sharp. "Prove it. Prove they're not some paternity trap. Ethan said you'd pull something like this. He said you've been stalking him for months, trying to get money." "I have never contacted Ethan once since our divorce was finalized." My voice stayed level. The babies were quieting down now, sensing my heartbeat. "Not once." "Liar?" Kayla took another step forward. Margaret's phone camera followed her like she was directing a reality show. "He has proof. He has a private investigator's report. Photos of you with different men. Receipts from fertility clinics." That's when my husband Connor opened the front door behind me. He was 42, broad-shouldered, with the kind of quiet presence that made people reconsider their volume. He'd been up all night with me, changing diapers and warming bottles, and he was still in his Marines t-shirt and sweatpants. "Ma'am?" he said to Kayla, his voice perfectly polite and absolutely final. "You need to leave our property. Now." Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. Kayla stared at Connor like he'd materialized out of nowhere. Across the street, Ethan got out of his Mercedes. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment used to be, back when I had a mortgage, back when I had anything. "Connor McCoy!" Ethan called out, his voice dripping with false friendliness. Didn't know Natalie had upgraded to military charity cases. "What did she tell you? That she needed a hero? That's her specialty, you know, playing the victim." Connor didn't respond. He just looked at me, a question in his eyes. I nodded once. He took our daughter from my arms, then our son, cradling both of them against his chest like he'd been born doing it. Then he stepped back inside and closed the door, leaving me alone on the porch. "Ethan," I said, "go home. This is home." He gestured at the house next to mine, the one he'd bought 6 months ago, the one he'd moved into with Kayla specifically to torture me. "Or did you forget? We're neighbors now, which means I get to see exactly what kind of mother you're pretending to be. Margaret here has been very helpful, actually. Haven't you, Margaret?" Margaret Hale finally lowered her phone. She was 63, divorced, and had apparently decided that destroying me was her new hobby. "I'm just documenting the truth," she said primly. "Someone has to. Those babies cry all night. It's a disturbance. I've already contacted the HOA." "The HOA that Ethan is now president of?" I asked. "How convenient." "Not all of us have to scourge," Ethan said, using his favorite made-up word, his personal shorthand for scrape and beg. He'd invented it during our marriage, used it every time I asked for grocery money toward the end. "Some of us actually contribute to society. Speaking of which, Natalie, how's that little temp job going? Still fetching coffee at the marine supply warehouse?" I felt my face burn. That job, the one I'd taken at $8 an hour after he'd left me with $2,400 in my bank account and a legal bill of $31,000, had been my survival. I'd worked there for 14 months, then used every spare minute to get my real estate license, then my broker's license, then started Haven Projects, my firm that specialized in transitional housing design. We had 12 employees now. We'd won 4 awards. I'd been invited to advise a White House panel on affordable housing, but none of that mattered to Ethan. To him, I would always be the woman who couldn't give him children, the defective wife he'd discarded. "I need to feed my babies," I said. "Excuse me." "That's all you're going to say?" Kayla's voice went shrill again. "Ethan is trying to be a good neighbor and you can't even—" "Kayla." I looked at her directly for the first time. She flinched. "You seem like a smart woman. Ask yourself why a man who claimed I was infertile is now trying to prove my children aren't mine. Ask yourself why he moved next door to his ex-wife. Ask yourself why he needs Margaret to file HOA complaints and why he hired a private investigator to follow me to prenatal appointments. Ask yourself what kind of man does that." Her face flickered, something like doubt. Then Ethan put his hand on her shoulder and the doubt vanished. "Don't listen to her," he said softly. "She's manipulative. She always has been. That's why she lost everything in the divorce." I went inside. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to lock the door. Connor was in the nursery, both babies asleep in his arms, rocking gently. He looked up when I came in. "You okay?" "No." I sat down on the floor, my back against the wall. "He's not going to stop. Margaret's not going to stop. They're going to make my life hell until I move, and I can't afford to move, Connor. I used everything I had to fight the divorce settlement. Everything." Connor carefully laid the babies in their cribs, then sat down beside me on the floor. He didn't try to hug me or tell me it would be okay. He just sat there, solid and present. "How much did you lose in the settlement?" he asked finally. $320,000. My voice cracked. "That's what my lawyer estimated. We were married 8 years. His business tripled during that time. I managed our household, organized all his corporate events, did all the networking that got him his biggest clients. And when we divorced, his lawyers undervalued everything. They claimed the business was failing. They claimed our investments were worthless. They threatened to drag it out for years, to bankrupt me with legal fees if I didn't accept." "And you accepted?" "I accepted $47,000 and got to keep my car. Ethan got the house, the business, the investment portfolio, everything." I wiped my eyes. "And then he sold our house for $890,000 6 months later. Bought the one next door for $650,000 cash, just to ruin me." Let me take you back 4 years to the day I met Connor. I'd been working at Harbor Marine Supply for 6 months, and I was eating lunch alone in my car because I couldn't afford the food truck, and I was too proud to eat in the break room with a homemade sandwich. It was raining. I was listening to a podcast about real estate licensing and trying not to cry. Someone knocked on my passenger window. A man in a worn Marine's jacket, holding an umbrella and a paper bag from the Vietnamese place down the street. "Sorry to bother you," he said when I rolled down the window. "I'm Connor. I work in shipping. I noticed you always eat alone, and I got an extra banh mi by accident. Pork and pate. You want it?" It wasn't by accident. I knew that even then. But I was so hungry, and it smelled so good, and his eyes were kind. "I'm Natalie," I said. "Thank you." He handed me the sandwich and started to walk away. "Wait," I called after him. "Don't you want to eat it with me?" He turned back, surprised. Then he smiled. Yeah, I'd like that." We ate lunch together every day for 3 months before I told him I was married. Separated, but technically married. He'd been so careful not to cross any lines, never asked me personal questions, never touched me beyond a handshake. When I finally explained the infertility, the failed treatments, Ethan's affair with his assistant Taylor, the divorce proceedings. Connor just listened. "I'm sorry," he said when I finished. "That's not right. You deserved better than that." "Everyone says that," I said bitterly. "No one means it." "I mean it." He pulled something from his wallet. A photo of a teenage girl with his eyes and a woman's smile. "My daughter Riley. Her mom died when she was 7. Cancer. I raised her alone for 11 years. She's in college now, studying engineering. And I'm telling you this because I know what it's like when people act like you failed at something you gave everything to. You didn't fail. He did." That was the moment. Not romance, not rescue, just recognition. Someone seeing me as a whole person instead of a broken vessel. We started dating after my divorce was finalized. Slowly, carefully. Connor had his own trauma, his own ghosts from 2 tours in Afghanistan. We didn't rush. We didn't make promises we couldn't keep. We just showed up for each other day after day until one morning I woke up and realized I was happy. When I got pregnant, I didn't believe it at first. After years of treatments, of specialists telling me my chances were less than 2%, I'd made peace with childlessness. I'd mourned that future. And then suddenly, there were 2 heartbeats on the ultrasound screen, and the doctor was saying, "Twins, healthy, strong." And I was sobbing so hard the technician had to stop the exam. Connor asked me to marry him in the ultrasound room. No ring, no plan, just him kneeling on the floor beside the examination table saying, "Marry me, please. Let me be their father officially. Let me be your family officially." I said yes. We got married at the courthouse 6 weeks later with Riley as our witness. I was 4 months pregnant, glowing, completely happy, and then Ethan found out. The first message came through my lawyer. Ethan wanted a paternity test. He claimed I'd been pregnant during our marriage and had hidden it to get a better settlement. It was insane. We'd been divorced for 16 months by the time I conceived. But he pushed. His lawyers sent threatening letters. They brought up the HOA complaints Margaret had filed. They brought up the private investigator's photos. Completely innocent photos of me having coffee with male clients, attending work dinners, living my life. They claimed I was an unfit mother before my children were even born. And then Ethan bought the house next door. "Why?" I asked Connor now, still sitting on the nursery floor. "Why is he doing this? He left me. He got everything he wanted. Why does he need to destroy me too?" Connor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because you're happy. And he can't stand it." It got worse over the next 3 months. Margaret filed noise complaints every single night, even when the babies were silent. The HOA sent violation notices about my lawn, my mailbox, my holiday decorations, things that had never been problems before. Ethan's PI started following me to work, to the pediatrician, to the grocery store. His car would idle outside Haven Projects for hours. Kayla would jog past our house every morning at exactly 6 a.m., talking loudly on her phone about women who trap men and paternity fraud. Taylor, Ethan's first girlfriend after me, the assistant he'd cheated with, started leaving reviews on Haven Project's website claiming I'd scammed her out of a deposit. They were fake, provably fake, but they damaged our reputation. I kept working. I kept nursing my babies. I kept pretending everything was fine, but I was dying inside. Every morning I woke up with my stomach in knots. Every time I left the house, I checked for Ethan's car. Every time my phone rang, I thought it was another legal threat. Connor saw it happening. Riley, home for summer break, saw it happening. Even my clients started to notice. One of them, Mrs. Chen, pulled me aside after a site meeting. "Natalie," she said gently. "Honey, you're shaking. What's wrong?" I tried to say nothing. The words came out anyway. "My ex-husband is trying to take my children. He's building a case that I'm unfit. He has an HOA president backing him up, a neighbor documenting everything I do, and lawyers who will drag this out until I can't afford to fight anymore. And I'm so tired. I'm so tired of being strong." Mrs. Chen hugged me right there on the construction site, hard hat and all. "You're not alone," she said. "You hear me? You're not alone." But I felt alone. Completely alone. Even with Connor beside me every night, even with Riley helping with the babies, I felt like I was drowning. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, Connor came home early from his job at the Veterans Center. He had an envelope in his hand and a strange look on his face. "Nat," he said, "sit down." "What's wrong?" My heart stopped. "Is it Riley? Is she okay?" "Riley's fine. Everyone's fine. But you need to read this." He handed me the envelope. It was addressed to him, care of the Veterans Center, but the letter inside was for me. "Dear Natalie, if you're reading this, then Connor finally gave you this letter, which means things have gotten bad enough that he felt you needed to know the truth. My name is Harold Vernon. I was your ex-husband's business partner for 12 years. I left the company 3 years ago after discovering what Ethan was doing. He's been embezzling since 2018. Small amounts at first, then increasingly bold. By the time I left, he'd moved $2.8 million into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands using shell companies. I reported it to the board. They buried it. Ethan's family controls the majority shares. They decided it was cheaper to buy my silence than to prosecute. I took the buyout. I'm not proud of it, but I kept copies of everything. When I heard through mutual friends that Ethan had divorced you and left you with almost nothing, I knew exactly what he'd done. He undervalued the marital assets because he'd already hidden the real money. He threatened you with endless litigation because he knew you couldn't afford to dig deeper. He controlled the narrative so thoroughly that even your own lawyer probably believed the business was struggling. It wasn't. It was hemorrhaging money into Ethan's private accounts. I'm dying now. Pancreatic cancer stage 4. I don't have much time, and I've spent the last 2 years trying to do one decent thing with what's left of my life. I've compiled every document, every transaction record, every email that proves what Ethan did. I've given copies to the SEC, the IRS, and a lawyer named Patricia Mendoza who specializes in divorce fraud. I've also tracked your career since the divorce. I know you started a firm. I know you're doing good work. I know you remarried and just had twins. Congratulations, truly. Ethan is going to come after you harder now. Men like him can't stand to see their victims thrive. He'll use the legal system to terrorize you. He'll use his money and his connections and his new position on the HOA board to make your life unbearable. Don't let him. You have more power than you know. Patricia Mendoza's office is at 1847 Hawthorne Street, Suite 320. She has everything, every document, every transaction, every lie Ethan told in your divorce proceedings. She's been waiting for you to be ready. I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner. I'm sorry I took the buyout and stayed silent while he destroyed your marriage and your finances. I'm sorry this letter is coming to you through Connor instead of directly. But when I learned he was a veteran advocating for other veterans, I knew he was the kind of man who would know when you needed this information. You're not broken, Natalie. You were never infertile. The specialist told you stress and Ethan's behavior were likely factors. You're not a gold digger or a fraud or any of the things he's called you. You're a woman who survived a man determined to erase you. Don't let him finish the job. All my respect, Harold P.S. I've left a trust for your twins' education. $100,000 each. Connor has the details. Consider it my apology for not being brave enough to help you sooner. I read the letter 4 times, then I read it again. My hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. How long have you had this? I asked Connor. 2 weeks. He sat down beside me. Harold contacted me at the center. He was a Marine too. We served in different units, but we knew people in common. He asked me to judge when you were ready to see this. I've been waiting for the right moment. The right moment? You've been hanging on by your fingernails, Nat. If I'd given you this a month ago, you would have charged into battle half prepared. You needed to be angry enough to fight but steady enough to win. He took my hand. Now you're both. I looked at the letter again, at the address, at the promise of evidence, documentation, proof. What if it's not enough? I whispered. It's enough. I've already spoken to Patricia Mendoza. She's been working on your case pro bono for 8 months. She has forensic accountants, SEC investigators, IRS auditors. She has Ethan's emails to his lawyers coaching them on how to manipulate you into accepting the bad settlement. She has recordings of Harold's conversations with the board covering up the embezzlement. Why didn't she contact me directly? Because you needed to want this. You needed to choose to fight. If she'd ambushed you with all this information while you were still drowning, you might have been too scared to act. Harold understood that. So did I. Connor squeezed my hand. Are you ready now? I thought about the coffee on my mailbox, about Kayla screaming lies on my porch, about Margaret's phone camera, and Ethan's smirk, and 3 years of being told I was worthless, defective, a burden. I thought about my babies sleeping in the next room, about Haven projects and the families I'd helped house, about Connor sitting on the floor with me every single time I fell apart, never once suggesting I should just give up and move away. Something clicked into place, something hard and clear and final. Yes, I said, I'm ready. Patricia Mendoza's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. She was 50-something, with silver hair and sharp eyes and a handshake that made me feel like I'd just signed up for war. Natalie, she said, gesturing me to a chair. I've been waiting for this meeting. Harold spoke very highly of you. I never met him. No, but he did his research. He knew exactly who you were and what you'd survived. She opened a file that had to be 6 inches thick. Let's be clear about what we have here. Your ex-husband embezzled $2.8 million from his company over a 7-year period. During that same period, he undervalued marital assets in your divorce by approximately $320,000. He perjured himself in divorce court by claiming financial hardship. He used company funds to pay for the private investigator he's now using to harass you, and he's currently under investigation by both the SEC and the IRS. My head was spinning. How much of this can we prove? All of it. Patricia turned the file toward me. Bank statements, email chains, notarized depositions from Harold Vernon and 2 other former employees. Wire transfer records showing money flowing to the Cayman accounts. Ethan's own handwriting on documents marked personal use, will reimburse. The SEC investigation is ongoing, Patricia continued. But the IRS moves faster when fraud is clear. They've already frozen his primary accounts. He doesn't know yet. The freeze happens this Friday at 5 p.m. His lawyers won't be notified until Monday morning. What does that mean for me? It means we file a motion to reopen your divorce settlement on the grounds of fraud and material misrepresentation. We have a court date in 6 weeks. In the meantime, I've also filed a restraining order against both Ethan and Margaret Hale for harassment. That'll be heard next Tuesday. He'll fight this. He has money, connections. Had money, Patricia corrected. His accounts are frozen. His board is panicking. His lawyers are about to drop him because they're implicated in the divorce fraud. And Harold's deposition is ironclad. He's willing to testify even though he's... She paused delicately. Even though his time is limited. I felt tears coming but pushed them back. Why is Harold doing this? Guilt, conscience, maybe both. Maybe... Patricia closed the file. He said he spent 12 years watching Ethan manipulate and discard people. He said you were the only one who deserved to know the truth. I left her office with a folder of documents and a court date. Connor was waiting in the car with the babies. He took one look at my face and smiled. We're fighting? He asked. We're fighting. Over the next 5 weeks, things moved fast. The restraining order was granted. Margaret stopped filming me. Ethan had to stay 50 feet from my property. The HOA complaints mysteriously stopped. Haven Projects won a major contract with the city. Riley came home for a long weekend and taught me how to block harassers on social media, and Ethan got desperate. His lawyers quit. His accounts stayed frozen. The SEC investigation leaked to the press, nothing explicit, but enough to make his investors nervous. His business partners started distancing themselves, and Kayla found out he'd been seeing Taylor again the entire time. She showed up at my door on a Wednesday afternoon, eyes red, makeup smudged. "I'm sorry," she said without preamble. "For everything. The coffee, the yelling, all of it. Ethan lied to me about everything. About you, about the divorce, about why you couldn't have kids." Her voice broke. "He showed me a medical report that said you were infertile. I just saw the same report with Taylor's name at the top. He's been recycling the same lies for all of us." I stood in my doorway holding my daughter, speechless. "He told me you were manipulative," Kayla continued, tears streaming now. "He said you trapped him in a marriage, that you faked infertility treatments to keep him, that you stole money from his business. I believed him. I'm so sorry." "Kayla, I found the offshore accounts. He was sloppy, left his laptop open. I saw everything. The shell companies, the Cayman transfers, the emails to his lawyers about coaching you into a bad settlement. All of it." She pulled a USB drive from her pocket. "I made copies. I don't know if this helps your case, but if it does, please use it." I took the drive. "Thank you. I'm moving out, back to Oregon. My parents—" She laughed bitterly. "My parents never liked Ethan. They said he reminded them of my ex-boyfriend who used to gaslight me. Turns out they were right." She looked at my daughter. "She's beautiful. They both are. I saw you with them sometimes, through the window. You're a good mom. I'm sorry I ever said otherwise." After she left, I sat on the couch for 20 minutes, just holding the USB drive and trying to process. Connor came home from work and I showed him. "Kayla turned on him," I said. "She gave me evidence." Connor took the drive to Patricia Mendoza that night. She called back within 2 hours. "It's a gold mine," she said, practically gleeful. "Email chains we didn't have. Additional accounts in Taylor's name. Proof that Ethan paid Margaret Hale $5,000 to file false HOA complaints. Natalie, this is better than Harold's documents because it's current. It proves ongoing fraud." What happens now? Now we end him. The court date came. The restraining order hearing turned into a full evidentiary session when Patricia submitted Kayla's USB drive along with Harold's documentation. Ethan showed up with a public defender because he couldn't afford his previous lawyers. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The judge reviewed the evidence for 45 minutes in silence. Then she looked up. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "I've seen a lot in my courtroom, but this is extraordinary in its calculated cruelty. You not only defrauded your ex-wife in divorce proceedings, you then systematically harassed her using company funds, fabricated HOA complaints, and attempted to build a false case of parental unfitness. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Ethan stood. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. "Your Honor, I was protecting my interests. Natalie was bitter about the divorce." "Ms. Brooks McCoy," the judge corrected icily. "Use her correct name." "She remarried quickly and got pregnant immediately. It seemed suspicious." "Because you told her for years she was infertile," Patricia interjected. "Because you blamed her for something that was never medically certain. And when she proved you wrong by building a successful life without you, you couldn't tolerate it." The judge held up her hand. "I've seen the medical records. Ms. Brooks McCoy underwent fertility treatments during her marriage to you. The specialists noted that stress and relationship factors were likely contributors to conception difficulties. What I don't see is any medical documentation of permanent infertility." She looked at me. "Did any doctor ever tell you that you couldn't have children?" "No, Your Honor," I said quietly. "They said it was unlikely, not impossible." "And yet your ex-husband used this uncertainty to divorce you, undervalue marital assets, and then claim fraud when you remarried and conceived naturally." The judge's expression was disgusted. "Mr. Brooks, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation of perjury and fraud." I'm also ordering an immediate forensic audit of all marital assets from your 8-year marriage, with an eye toward proper equitable distribution. In the meantime, the restraining order is extended indefinitely. You are not to contact Ms. Brooks McCoy, her family, her neighbors, or her place of business. Violation will result in immediate arrest. Ethan's face went white. Your Honor, this is concluded. Court adjourned. I walked out of that courtroom with Connor's hand in mine, Patricia beside us carrying her briefcase full of victory. We didn't speak until we got to the parking garage. Then Connor said, "You won." "Harold won," I corrected. He did this, not me. Harold gave you the weapon. You're the one who chose to use it. That Saturday, the news broke. Local business owner under investigation for embezzlement and fraud. The article didn't name me, court proceedings were still sealed, but everyone who mattered knew. My colleagues at Haven Projects, my clients, the neighborhood. Margaret Hale sold her house within a month and moved to Arizona. She never apologized. Taylor left Ethan and moved back to California. I heard through Riley that she told people she was just as much a victim as I was. Maybe she was. I didn't have energy to care. Kayla sent me a Christmas card from Oregon. It said, "Thank you for being kind when you had every reason not to be." I'm doing better. I hope you are too. I never responded. Some bridges are better left burned. But there was one thing left. One person I needed to see. Harold Vernon was in hospice at Willow Creek, a care facility 20 minutes outside town. Patricia had given me his room number. I'd been putting off the visit for weeks, afraid of what I'd say or what I'd feel. Connor drove me. The twins were with Riley for the afternoon. It was a cold Sunday in October, leaves falling in the parking lot, the kind of day that feels both sad and beautiful. Harold's room was small but comfortable. He was asleep when I arrived, so thin I almost didn't recognize him from the photos Patricia had shown me. 72 years old, dying because he'd spent 30 years smoking cigars after board meetings. I sat down in the chair beside his bed. The nurse had said I could stay as long as I wanted. He woke up after about 10 minutes, blinked at me in confusion, then recognition. "Natalie Brooks," he said. His voice was reedy, damaged. "Heard you won." "I won," I confirmed, "because of you. Should have done it sooner." He coughed, painful and wet. "Should have come forward when you were still married. Could have saved you the divorce, maybe. Or maybe I needed the divorce to become who I am now." He smiled slightly, philosophical. "Connor said you were strong." Connor talks about me too much. Connor's a good man, so was my son, Marines, both of them. My boy died in Fallujah. Connor reminds me of him. That's why I trusted him with the letter. Harold shifted in bed, wincing. "You really have twins?" "Boy and girl, 3 months old. Connor worships them." "Good. That's good." His eyes were closing again. "I was a coward, you know. Took the money, stayed quiet, let Ethan destroy people for years. Your case, it's not redemption. Too late for that. But maybe it's something." "It's everything," I said. "You gave me my life back." "You did that yourself." He was fading. "I just gave you the tools." I stayed until he fell asleep again. The nurse told me he probably had a few weeks left, maybe less. I thanked her and left a note for Harold on his bedside table. "You weren't a coward. You were human. Thank you for choosing courage when it mattered most." Natalie. He died 6 days later. I went to the funeral. So did Connor and Patricia Mendoza, and 15 other people whose cases Harold had helped before he died. The pastor said Harold had spent his last year making amends, trying to right wrongs, living proof that it's never too late to choose better. I thought about that a lot in the months that followed. The forensic audit came back. Ethan owed me $387,000 in undervalued marital assets plus 8 years of interest. His frozen accounts were used to pay me first. $502,000 total settlement. The rest of his money went to the IRS and his creditors. His business collapsed. His board forced him out. His family connections dried up when the embezzlement details leaked. He moved to another state, I heard. Got a job in sales somewhere. I didn't care enough to check. I used the settlement to pay off Haven Project's startup loans and put the rest in a college fund for the twins. 3 months after the court victory, something else happened. Something I didn't expect. I was at a coffee shop near my office grabbing an afternoon latte when someone called my name. Natalie? Natalie Brooks? I turned. A woman about my age, professional clothes, nervous smile. I'm sorry to bother you, she said. I'm Rachel Chen. You designed the transitional housing complex for my mother's nonprofit. Mrs. Chen, yes, of course. I shook her hand. Is everything okay with the project? The project's perfect. Better than perfect. Rachel hesitated. I actually wanted to talk to you about something else. I work for a foundation that supports women entrepreneurs who've overcome difficult circumstances. We're starting a mentorship program. I read about your case in the news. Just the basics, nothing invasive. And I wondered if you'd be willing to be interviewed for our website. Not about your ex-husband. About how you rebuilt. I almost said no. I was so tired of being defined by survival, by trauma, by what had been done to me. But then I thought about Harold choosing to help even when it was hard. About Connor showing up with a sandwich when I was alone. About Kayla giving me evidence even though she'd participated in the harassment. Yes, I said, I'll do it. The interview ran 3 months later. I talked about going from homemaker to temp worker to real estate broker to design firm founder. I talked about the resume gap and how I'd filled it with certifications, volunteer work, proof of my worth. I talked about Haven Projects and our 12 employees and the families we'd housed. I didn't talk about Ethan by name, but I talked about what it's like to be told you're worthless and then prove it wrong. About what it's like to lose everything and build something better from the ashes. The interview went viral. Thousands of comments from women who'd survived similar divorces, similar humiliations, similar systematic erasure. They shared their own stories. They asked questions. They created a community in the comments section that Rachel's foundation eventually turned into an actual support network. Someone nominated me for a national award for affordable housing innovation. I didn't win, but I was a finalist. I got invited to speak at a White House panel on transitional housing policy. I met other designers, other advocates, other people who'd turned their pain into purpose. And through all of it, Connor was there, steady, present, never trying to save me, just standing beside me while I saved myself. 1 year after the court victory, we were sitting on our porch, the house Ethan couldn't take from me, watching the twins play in a kiddie pool. They were 16 months old now, walking and babbling and completely oblivious to the war that had been fought for their future. You know what's strange? I said to Connor. I'm grateful. For what? For Ethan leaving, for the divorce, for all of it. I leaned against his shoulder. If he hadn't discarded me, I never would have found you. I never would have built Haven Projects. I never would have learned that I could survive alone before choosing to be with someone. The pain was real, but so was the growth. Connor kissed the top of my head. I'm grateful too, even for the harassment, because it made Harold decide to act. It made Kayla wake up. It made you fight. Think he'll ever apologize? I meant Ethan. No, men like him don't. They just move on to the next person they can hurt. I hope she fights back too. She will, because you did. You showed people it's possible. That night, after the twins were asleep, I wrote a letter I never intended to send. Dear Ethan, I'm not writing this for you. I'm writing it for me. You wanted me to feel worthless. You succeeded for a while. You used my body's natural limitations as proof of my failure. You took almost everything I'd helped build and told me I didn't deserve it. You moved next door to torture me. You turned my neighbor into a spy and your girlfriend into a weapon. And in doing all of that, you gave me the greatest gift imaginable. You showed me exactly who you are, not when you left. I knew who you were then, but when you couldn't let me move on, when you had to keep hurting me even after you'd won everything. That's when I understood. You didn't discard me because I was broken. You discarded me because I reminded you that you are. I have two beautiful children now, a husband who knows what love actually means, a business I built from nothing, friends who support me, a future I'm excited about. And you have, what? A criminal record? A business collapse? A string of women who finally saw through you? I hope you find peace someday. I really do. Not for your sake, for everyone you meet after this. But I'm not waiting around to see if you do. I'm done being your victim. I'm done being defined by what you took from me. I'm just done with you entirely. Natalie. I burned that letter in our backyard fire pit, watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash, felt the heat on my face and the night air cold on my back and the absolute certainty that I was free. That's the thing they don't tell you about revenge. Real revenge isn't public confrontation or dramatic speeches. Real revenge is living well without needing them to see it. It's building a life so full and rich that their opinion stops mattering entirely. 6 months later, I was standing on the neighborhood sidewalk at 11:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. The twins were at daycare. I'd just come from a meeting with city planners about a new transitional housing project. I was carrying my laptop bag and drinking an iced coffee and thinking about absolutely nothing related to Ethan Brooks. Then I heard his voice. Natalie. I turned. He was standing 20 feet away, barely on the legal side of the 50-foot restraining order. He looked older, tired. His suit was off the rack instead of tailored. His hair was graying. Kayla was with him. I blinked. Kayla? She stepped forward, and I realized, not Kayla. Different face, younger, similar blonde hair, similar desperate to please energy. This is Taylor, Ethan said. My fiancé. Not the Taylor I knew, a new one, of course. Congratulations, I said flatly. We wanted to talk to you, Taylor said. She sounded nervous. Ethan explained everything about the misunderstanding with the divorce settlement. The fraud, I corrected. The court called it fraud. And we thought maybe we could clear the air, start fresh. We're going to be neighbors until we sell the house, and it seems silly to keep this tension. I have no tension, I said. I have a restraining order, which requires Ethan to stay 50 feet from me. He's currently at 47 feet. I didn't have a tape measure, I was guessing, but the flicker of panic in Ethan's eyes told me I was close. I just want to apologize, Ethan said, taking a step back, for any pain I caused during our divorce. I was going through a difficult time. You embezzled $2.8 million and blamed me for being infertile. That's not... He stopped, regrouped. The point is, I'm in a different place now. Taylor and I are happy. We're having a baby, and I think we can all move forward. You're having a baby, I repeated slowly, with Taylor. Yes, he actually smiled, proud. We're due in February. Something in me cracked open. Not sadness, not jealousy, something darker and more amused. That's wonderful, I said. I hope Taylor has an easier time than I did. Tell me, Ethan, will you blame her too if the pregnancy is difficult? Will you tell everyone she's defective? Will you move next door to her after you leave? Taylor's face went white. He said you were bitter. I'm not bitter, I'm informed. I looked directly at her. Ask him why he's really back. Ask him if he's paid his court-ordered settlement yet. Ask him if his business partner's deposition is public record. Ask him why his lawyers dropped him. She's lying, Ethan said quickly. She's still angry that I moved on. I have twins, I said. Beautiful, healthy twins. 16 months old, with a man who actually loves me instead of using me as proof of his virility. I'm not angry you moved on. I'm grateful. Not all of us have to scourge. Ethan's voice rose, the old contempt bleeding through. Some of us don't need to beg and scrape for every... Ethan? Connor's voice, calm and carrying, from behind me. I turned. Connor was standing on our porch with both twins in his arms. He'd come home early. He'd heard everything. He walked down the driveway slowly, deliberately, stopping exactly beside me. He didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. His presence was the entire statement. Taylor looked at the twins, at Connor, at me, then at Ethan. You told me she couldn't have children. She couldn't, Ethan said desperately. The doctors said it was unlikely, Connor corrected, his voice still calm. They also said stress and relationship factors were contributors. Natalie got pregnant 6 months after her divorce was finalized, almost like removing the stressor helped. This is harassment, Ethan said. I'm calling your public defender? I suggested. The one the court assigned because you can't afford your own lawyers anymore? Taylor took a step away from Ethan, then another. She was staring at the twins like they were proof of something terrible. You said she was infertile, she repeated. You said that's why you left. You said she was obsessed with getting pregnant, and it ruined your marriage. She was. The treatments, the hormones, she was impossible to live with. I did 3 rounds of IVF, I said quietly. 3 years of treatments that failed. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I can count. And you never once held me. You just got angry that I wasn't producing results. That's what you called it. Results. Margaret Hale had come outside from her old house. The new owners must have let her visit, and was watching from her former porch. Several other neighbors had drifted to their windows. Mrs. Chen from down the street was watering her garden and very obviously listening. Connor shifted our daughter to his other hip. Natalie, he said softly, you don't have to do this here. I know. But I wasn't done. I looked at Ethan one more time. I'm going to tell you something I learned this year. The most powerful thing you can say to someone who tried to destroy you is, you failed. Look at me. Look at my family. Look at my business. Look at my life. You took almost everything from me, and I built it back better. So thank you, actually. Thank you for showing me what I could survive. You think you won? Ethan's voice was shaking now. You think some settlement and a sob story makes you a winner? I had everything. Had, Connor said. Past tense. You're nobody, Ethan shouted. You're a temp worker who got lucky. You're a real estate broker, I said, and a licensed contractor, and the founder of Haven Projects, which employs 12 people and just won a $4.2 million city contract for transitional housing, and a mother, and a wife, and a person who doesn't need you to validate my existence. Taylor was crying now, silent tears running down her face. She looked young, too young. How old are you? I asked her gently. 24, she whispered. I closed my eyes briefly. He told you I was crazy, didn't he? That I tried to trap him? That he barely escaped? She nodded. I was 30 when we married. I'm 35 now. I gave him 8 years. I managed his household, organized his events, supported his career. And when my body didn't perform the way he wanted, he decided I was disposable. I looked at Ethan. How long until she's disposable too? I don't have to listen to this. Ethan grabbed Taylor's arm. Let's go. She pulled away. Don't touch me. Taylor, is any of it true? Her voice was stronger now. The embezzlement? The court case? The frozen accounts? It was a misunderstanding. The judge was biased. The judge was federal, Connor said. And the SEC investigation is public record. So is the IRS audit. So is the divorce fraud case. Taylor looked at me one more time. I'm sorry, she said. Then she turned and walked away. Not toward Ethan, just away. Ethan stood there on the sidewalk, alone, his face red and his hands clenched. He looked like he wanted to say something else, something cutting, something final, something that would make him feel powerful again. But there was nothing left, No money, no threats, no leverage, just a man who'd spent years destroying people and finally had nothing left to destroy with. Stay away from my family, I said. It wasn't a threat, just a statement of fact. The restraining order is permanent. Violate it and you'll be arrested. We're done. Connor and I turned and walked back to our house. The twins were babbling, oblivious to the drama. Mrs. Chen waved from her garden. Margaret Hale had disappeared back inside. I didn't look back to see if Ethan was still standing there. I didn't care. That night, after the twins were asleep, Riley video called from college. She'd heard about the confrontation. Mrs. Chen had texted her, because of course she had. Dad said you faced down the dragon, Riley said, grinning. He said you were amazing. I was tired, I corrected, and done with being afraid. Same thing. She paused. You know what I realized? I spent my whole childhood watching my dad handle things calmly, never yelling, never losing his cool, just being steady, and now I'm watching you do the same thing. You're good for each other. You're good for my siblings. I felt tears coming. They're lucky to have you as a sister. I'm lucky to have you as a stepmom, even if I'm technically too old for that to be official, she smiled. Thanks for fighting. Thanks for not letting him win. After the call ended, Connor came into the bedroom and sat beside me on the bed. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I think I am. I leaned against him. It's over, isn't it? Actually over. It's over. What if he violates the restraining order? What if he tries something else? Then we'll handle it. Together. Connor kissed my temple. But I don't think he will. You took his power, all of it. He's got nothing left but his own misery. 6 months later, I visited Harold Vernon's grave. It was a small cemetery outside town, quiet and green. His headstone was simple. Harold Vernon, 1952 to 2024, Marine, father, friend. He chose courage. I brought flowers, white roses. I stood there for a long time, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, I just said, thank you, for seeing me when everyone else looked away, for giving me the tools to fight, for choosing to help even when it was hard. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. It sounded almost like an answer. I took a photo of the headstone and sent it to Patricia Mendoza with a message. Visited Harold today. Thank you for everything. She replied immediately. He'd be proud of you. You did what he hoped you'd do. You won and then you moved on. That's the real victory. She was right. The real victory wasn't the settlement or the court case or even the public confrontation. The real victory was my life, Haven projects, my children, my marriage, my peace. I drove home that afternoon and pulled into my driveway at exactly 4:47 p.m. The twins were playing in the backyard with Connor. Riley was home for spring break and making dinner in the kitchen. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes and home. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching my family. My actual family. The one I'd chosen and built and fought for. Connor looked up and smiled. Hey, how was the visit? Good, I said. Really good. That night, after dinner and baths and bedtime stories, I sat down at my computer and typed a final update for Rachel Chen's foundation website. 1 year ago, I was standing on my porch being screamed at by my ex-husband's girlfriend, while my neighbor filmed everything for evidence that would never be used. I was exhausted, broke, terrified, and convinced I'd lost everything that mattered. Today, I own my house. I run my own business. I have 2 healthy children and a husband who knows that love isn't about fixing someone. It's about standing beside them while they fix themselves. I didn't get here by being strong every day. I got here by being stubborn on the days I couldn't be strong. By accepting help from people who saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself. By learning that silence isn't peace. It's just the price you pay for someone else's comfort. If you're in a situation where someone is systematically trying to erase you, financially, emotionally, legally, please know this. They're trying so hard because you're a threat. You have power they're afraid of. You have potential they need to destroy before you discover it. Don't let them. Fight back. Get help. Document everything. Find your Harold Vernon, your Patricia Mendoza, your Connor McCoy, the people who will hand you weapons and then step back and let you choose whether to use them. And when you win, not if, when, remember that the real revenge isn't making them suffer. It's building a life so good they become irrelevant. I posted it. Within an hour, it had 500 comments. Within a day, 5,000 shares. Women sent messages saying, "This is my story too," and "I didn't know I could fight back," and "Thank you for showing us it's possible." I read every single comment, replied to as many as I could, shared resources, made connections, watched a community form in real time. That's when I understood what Harold Vernon had really given me. Not just evidence, not just a legal case. He'd given me proof that one person choosing courage can change everything. If you're watching this and you've ever had to walk away from someone who treated you as disposable, type "I survived" in the comments. Or if you're still fighting, still gathering evidence, still building your case, type "I'm fighting back." Both are valid. Both are brave. And if this story means something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Stories about people who refuse to stay erased. Thank you for being here.